and so this can cut both ways for those of us who know that there's tons of clergy sexual abuse that occurs, right? And at the same time, in understanding that His Holiness has been a celibate his entire life and has been withdrawn from external culture and society in many ways, and particularly around things sexual, it's just not how he's thinking, right? And so he's goofy. And so you can see him pulling people's noses, pulling people's ears, being very physically goofy with people. And because of that, there's sometimes sort of cross-cultural gaffes. And so with Tibetan folks, mouths and tongues aren't necessarily seen as sexual. You can Google it right now and say Tibetans and their tongues, and you will find thousands of pictures of Tibetans going like this. And there's like just a lot of, for those who are just listening, I'm sticking out my tongue in like 7 different ways. And so there's a lot of goofing and greeting and communicating with tongues that is 100,000% non-sexual. And so to me, there's like this cross-cultural gaffe between the missing what he heard and the tongues not being sexual, and the fact that he's all, like the first time I met him, he played a humongous practical joke on me, and he's just goofy and playful, and sometimes even like he pushes the edge. He's a little inappropriate in some ways, but not sexually inappropriate. Just he uses physical humor and slapstick humor all the time to break the tension between people, especially those who like revere him as a god or feel awkward. And so the boy is feeling awkward because it took forever for him to get onto the stage, and his mother is sitting there, like you see her expression. She's like, "What are you doing?" Like, like it was, she's laughing, but she's also like, this is the event she's putting on. The boy is awkward, and His Holiness starts playing with him. That is literally what is happening. And so for those who know him, know that that's what happened. And so was the boy harmed? Who was harmed? From the post-audience interview where the boy is literally saying the words, "It is inexpressible," he said. "It is indescribable, inexpressible, the blessing of being be able to receive a blessing from His Holiness." That's what the boy said immediately thereafter. And then afterwards, the boy like goes and tries to do this other thing. There's blessing when you break a coconut to get his blessing. This was happening within the South Asian context. And notions of bodily autonomy of children, of course, need to be respected generally, yes. But how things play out as sexual or not sexual or abusive or not abusive actually has cultural context. And so almost every South Asian person I know who saw it was like, "This is Dalai Lama, be the Dalai Lama." And it never even occurred to us to think that it would be sexual. But those of us who straddle societies and cultures understand, oh, hey, yeah, that's not going to look good. And people are going to run with it for clickbait. And that is what happened. So,
and it didn't happen immediately, right? This was an event in February.
That's right.
Of this year. We're now having this conversation in the middle of May. This popped off in April, right? And so when we think about, who is harmed, I think about in that situation, right? Kind of nobody. Like, there was awkwardness, sure, but like, that's not harm, right? I like to think about the ways that I want to shout out Stas and Lee from Spring Up when, they use their analogies of like, harm, conflict, abuse, like, right? It is not conflict. It is not harm that we disagree or have like an awkward moment, right? It's not even harm that I like happen to like brush up against your shoulder that like has a bruise, right? Like you're hurt. And I think when this was publicized, like this hurt a lot of people, right? Both because it reminded them of things that happened in their lives, things that have happened in the lives of people around them. And because of the disconnect between the cultural context and, the edited nature of the video, like there was a lot of hurt that was brought up because of something that was perceived as an older person taking advantage of a younger person, right? Like, yeah, that's understandably upsetting for some people. Yeah. And so like there is hurt there, but like, what was the harm?
Right.
Who was harmed? Yeah.
We can have our feelings and we can find things disturbing, but that doesn't, and we can receive. So here's an example. There's, let's say that when you were a kid, somebody had harmed you with like a chair, that they'd beat you with a chair or something. And sometimes seeing chairs that are shaped like that chair that was a part of your childhood trauma is triggering to you. That is so reasonable, right? There are many people who were sexually harmed as children where tongues were a part of that harm. I get it. That is horrible, right? To have to see someone that you revered and respected and wanted to believe, like, there's one perfect person out there in the world. There still is. He's amazing and nothing bad happened. I can see how seeing that picture made you feel yucky, right? But that doesn't mean that what we are seeing through our lens, and I'm not saying this to gaslight anybody, it's to understand that we have our own cultural context, our own lived experience through which we see. There's so much knowledge we have as survivors, as people with direct lived experience, as experts in certain areas. And there are other pieces of knowledge and wisdom about, for example, how other people live and exist in the world that we also have to fold in, right? And so we have to be able to hold those two truths simultaneously.